Young Creatives Chat with Katy Baird. It's so lovely to have you here today. We're very privileged to be talking to you. Um, I wanted to ask you some questions. To start off with, we wanted to know 3 things about yourself that we would know if we really knew you.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. First of all, let me start with saying thank you for inviting me. 3 things about myself that you would only know if you knew me well. I guess one thing that not many people know is that I've got a new hip. About 10 years ago, I got a replacement hip, which is part titanium and part ceramic, and does sometimes set the triggers off when I go through airports. It's been quite incredible because I was in obviously a lot of pain beforehand, and then since I got my new hip I was pain free. I mean, it's amazing what they can do now. So not many people know that. Another thing is that, well, this one might not be that popular, but I often feel a bit sad about the fact that we've domesticated dogs. I don't know if other people ever think this, but I've been thinking about it a lot because there's so many dogs in Hastings, and I just think, God, isn't it a shame that we've made them do everything we tell them to do? And I imagine they could just run free. I mean, I know that's not possible now, but I do think about that a lot, but I don't really share it with anybody, so not many people would know that. And I think if you knew me quite well, you'd know that I cry at reality TV. I'm terrible for it. I'm also a bit addicted to reality TV. In fact, just last night, I don't know if you've seen Alan Carr's interior design show on iPlayer, but I cried because my favourite, Siobhan, got through to the final. I get really invested in these people's lives and then I just cry. And my close friends do take the mickey out of me for it because it's slightly ridiculous. But I don't know, I'm an emotional person. What can I say?
I think it's sometimes good to be an emotional person because, you don't want to appear heartless to people.
No, but then also the problem is when I cry is my eyes get a bit puffy. So I'm a bit like, oh my God. In fact, I don't know if you watch Gogglebox, but there's one woman on that always cries as well. And I'm like, oh yeah, Jenny. I'm like, yeah, that's like me.
That's great. Thank you.
How did you know that this career was for you?
Well, this is an interesting question. I guess I've kind of got 2 careers on the go. So I run an arts organisation called Home Live Art based in Hastings. And then I also have my own practice as an artist in predominantly performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I really knew that either of them were for me, to be honest. I mean, I know now that they're for me, but it wasn't something I thought about originally or even kind of knew anything about.
Yeah.
I left school at 15. I was on the dole for ages, and then I worked in clubs and pubs for about 10 years. And then it wasn't until like my late 20s where I was like, if you work in pubs for a long time and the older you get, the younger your manager and your area manager and your general manager get, and you get a bit like, oh God, what am I doing? And the hours and the lifestyle and everything, I thought I want to do something else. But I didn't have any qualifications, but I saw there was this access course to university in Glasgow, where I'm from, and it was totally free, and they also supported you to go there, which maybe doesn't happen now. So I did that, access to university, and then ended up at university in my 30s. And there I did this sort of module, this drama module on autobiographical performance with an incredible artist that's no longer with us now, called Adrian Howells. And something just clicked. I just loved it. And I just started sort of getting more into performances. As I got more into it, I found out more about the industry. And I started doing, often I couldn't find the space where to see the artists that I wanted to see or for my own work. So I started doing making my own spaces, for us to perform. And then I realized I loved doing that. And then that kind of snowballed and I got a job doing that and then another job. And then I've kind of ended up where I've ended up. Yeah. So I guess it's a mixture of sort of luck, hard work, and following my gut.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. Thank you. I think it's really nice to hear that you don't always have to know what you want to do right away. Like it takes time to get places, especially with the arts. It takes time to figure out where you want to fall into. And as you said, it snowballs. It kind of becomes this thing that develops. So that's really interesting to hear about.
I think so. And I think that sort of I had 10 years between school and university, which I really am super happy about as well, because that, I developed lots of skills and lots of other things that I'd have done that maybe I wouldn't have if I'd went straight from school to university,
Yeah.
When I was at uni, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I was really into it because I was just learning all this stuff and I was just ready. It was just the right time for me,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I also think it's really important to learn what you need to do as well. So that's a really cool thing to hear. What has been the most challenging aspect of your career?
I think both running an arts organisation and being an artist, the biggest challenge for me is believing in myself. I think that can be really difficult, and I think a lot of people struggle with it. I think the arts in general sometimes doesn't feel like a space for someone like me. Sometimes I feel like I can still get intimidated by particular spaces or by particular people because of the way they talk, because I feel there's a way you're meant to act. And that's something that I've always kind of struggled with, and I get better. The more you do things, the more confident you become, the more you can do it. But I also, similar to when I started my career, how I've overcome it a lot is just to create spaces and to work with people that I want to work with. I'm in a fortunate position where I can do that. And sometimes, I guess sometimes you don't have to be part. I think being a queer person as well, you realize quite quickly how important community is, and you realize you're suddenly kind of outside. I mean, I came out when I was 16, so it was a long time ago. I'm 43 now. But suddenly you're not in, suddenly you're on the outside looking in, and that's something that's kind of always been with me. And actually, it can be really a strength, to be on the outside looking in and to have a community. And so I'm really interested in creating my own spaces, create my own communities, and creating places. Like everything we do, we try and make fun and accessible and a place where everyone can be, because I don't like that feeling of feeling like something's not for me,
Yeah, it's definitely really important to create a space that works for you, because otherwise you're not going to thrive in it. So yeah, I think
But
it's
then
really good.
I think the flip side of that is that I possibly don't have as much of a profile, because if you're an arts organisation and you talk about yourself in a certain way, you use particular words, you use particular branding, you go to certain events, you talk to the right people, your profile raises within the sector. And if your profile raises, you often get more money and more support and stuff like that. But if you're kind of outside of it and doing your own thing, but also working within it as well, but not playing that game, then it's a decision you have to make, I think, sometimes, and neither decision is a right or wrong decision. But it's interesting to see how language and how where you position yourself could the impact that has, in terms of also the audience that engages with you, as well as your place in kind of the sector. So there's lots of things to think about and decisions to be made around that. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you.
In contrast to that last question, what has been the highlight of your career?
I think the highlight of my career is probably getting the job at Home Live Art to be the artistic director. I've been here 3 years now, and I just feel so lucky to be in a position where I can essentially, myself and our executive directors, Ducky, we make the decisions about the kind of program we do, the kind of artists we work with, and that's a really fortunate position to be in. And I feel really lucky that I get to work with such incredible partners in Hastings and nationally, but it's very much on our terms, and we can have an integrity, I feel sometimes, that perhaps larger organisations with much more staff and that are kind of sort of beholden to different stakeholders can't have. So I feel just really lucky, and it's totally changed my life to be in this position, for sure, and to be able to advocate for certain artists, to advocate for live art, for experimental practice, to start building new audiences in Hastings and the Southeast for the work that I love to see and to perform, and the artists that I love to work with. So it's just been, I mean, it's hard, don't get me wrong, it's hard, and it has been such a learning curve, and it's hard also when you're used to sort of having someone where you go, oh God, what do that, and how should I do that, and oh God, I haven't done that, and you've got to learn to just do it and then deal with it afterwards. But you learn every time you do it, you learn, and it's cheesy, but the things that you don't get right, you learn from that even more than the stuff you do, so
Yeah, absolutely.
it's been super intense. It's been amazing as well. So I just feel so lucky. Yeah. But I need to stop saying that. No, wait, and stop saying that, because that's also a thing that we do a lot, is we say we're lucky, but also I've worked really hard to get here as well.
Yeah.
That, and I have to keep checking myself about that. It's a combination, but I think that's something a lot of people do as well. Go, oh, I was dead lucky, but actually no, I've worked my guts out to be here also. So
yeah, you got to recognize that you actually kind of deserve to be in that position because you've worked to get there and you know things, and it's kind of you're meant to be there in a way. It's not just pure luck.
Yeah, but it can be hard to do that when you're not used to doing that.
Yeah.
Like letting yourself sort of feel that or have those conversations with yourself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you ever experienced a creative block, and how have you overcome it?
Yes, millions of times. I think as an artist, I can struggle a lot, and what I tend to do is just make sure I have some kind of deadline. That really, really helps me. Particularly early in my career, I would apply for a lot of like scratch nights or nights to perform little bits or cabaret nights or whatever. Just apply for everything, and then I'd be like, oh no, okay, right. So in 3 weeks I've got to perform and I don't have anything. I better make something. So I think that really, really helps, and I do that as well with work. I think I always end up like sort of making starting projects or being part of stuff and going, yeah, we can do that, and then going, oh God, like I don't know what we're going to do here and I don't know how to do that, but then it always seems to work out. It's like my brain kind of says yes to things before I can catch up, then I worry about it, and then I'm like, what are we going to do? And then I just seem to get on with it. But I think sort of creatively, definitely deadlines, having things, applying for funding, and then you spend all this time applying for funding, and then you get it and you're like, oh my God, am I going to actually have to do all this stuff I said I was going to do? It can be really like, whoa, but then you have to do it because you've got the money to do it. So I think it's just things like that, just making sure you keep ticking over, making sure there's always little things that you're doing in the horizon, and conversations. And the big thing is seeing stuff, like seeing a lot of work, seeing what's out there, seeing what artists are doing. That really helps if you've got a creative block.
Yeah, I completely agree. I often agree to things and then realize what I've done and not sure how to do it, but somehow it always manages to work out. I think you just need to push yourself more than you think you can, and you'll learn from it because you can do it.
Yeah, and what's the worst?
Exactly.
That's why I keep thinking, well, just because this event, no one came to this event, no one's, what I mean? It's not the end of the world, even though it feels like it. I think also with events, for me, even though I put on events, often just at that bit before the doors open, I always go back to that like little 14-year-old that's like, it's like your birthday party and you're waiting for people to come and you think no one's going to come, and sometimes they don't. I always go back to that feeling, and I think, and even like when I'm on stage, before I go on stage, I go back to, I'm like, why have I done this? What am I doing? And then it happens, and then the thing is what is good, do you know what I mean? It doesn't, if only 4 people came to that performance or that event, they might have had the best experience of their life, and that impact might go on and on and on, rather than 100 people, so it's also challenging what's kind of good and what's bad as well in my own mind, but you always, I forgot, I think we went off piece. What was the question? Oh, creative block.
Thank you.
How has COVID-19 affected the way you work?
Well, as an artist, it's been really difficult. I mean, literally overnight, all my gigs disappeared, like everything disappeared. And now I'm starting to get back in contact with venues, with promoters, with people that would usually give me jobs. And they're all like, well, actually, we've still got all these artists from a year ago that we didn't work with that we want to, quite rightly, honour their contract. So it's like, God, we're going to have to wait even longer now. So it's been really difficult in that sense. Within the organisation, actually, we're a small organisation, really small organisation, and we didn't have an office. We were all kind of working remotely anyway. What the biggest impact was, we work with a lot of community groups, so trying to get everything online has been a real challenge. Some stuff has worked, some stuff hasn't worked, some groups are just doing something completely different to what they were doing, but it's a big challenge because you're having to shift everything. But what it has done is it's given us some space to think, and you realize, I think the arts especially are like this treadmill, you know, everyone's like next project, next project, next project, and it can get a bit like, and so everybody's suddenly had this forced time to sort of stop and thinking like, well, is that the way, just because this is how we've done a festival, just because this is how we've done an artist development scheme, just because this is how we've done an event before, because this is what we always do, is that the right way? Is there different ways to do it? Is there other ways that we can do it that might work better for everyone, for artists, for organizations? So it's given us a lot of time to think, which has been absolutely brilliant. And yeah, and now I'm just in the middle of doing a business plan for the next sort of year and a half now, and it feels very different to what it was before COVID, because I'm asking myself different questions around what it means to be a cultural and arts organization right now at this moment, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly been a growing period for a lot of people. I know it's been so weird to just like overnight you had to adapt to this whole situation, like try and convert things. So it's really interesting to hear how it's affected you, not only in like trying to reach out to other groups, but also within your own organization. So it's really interesting to hear how like both sides of the coin in a way. Thank you.
Have you got 3 tips for sparking creativity?
3 tips for sparking creativity. One, I think I already said it, but go and see, if you're into performance, go and see, even online as it is now, as much performance as possible. If you're into visual art, go and see as much as possible. Immerse yourself, see loads of artists, get loads of inspiration. Like, I think that is the key thing. And also, as some programs performance, I have to go and see a lot of work. That is my job. But as an artist, you just have to keep seeing what people are doing, because that's what stimulates you. That's where things can fire off. So I think that's definitely one. I would say get other people in a room. There's nothing like having a few people in a room to really kind of get things to start. You think about things you would never think about before, because you're suddenly just all there in the room, and you're kind of, and whether that's obviously virtually or online. And I would say the third one is kind of linked to that, but just say everything, you know, say every idea you have, even if you think it's like, it's too big, we can never do it, it's too small, it's never going to work, it's the most stupidest thing you've ever heard. Say it all, because often out of that will spark something else, and something else will go there, and then you'll end up somewhere completely different. So yeah, that's what I like to do, is just get everything out there, and then you can see what you're playing with. But never be scared to just say anything when you're thinking about sort of ideas, or when you're making work. Put everything out there, and then slowly patterns will start to merge, or things will come out which you might see or use in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely very helpful to bounce off of other people, because sometimes you can get very stuck inside your own head, and having other people to communicate with and like ask about things can be really helpful.
Yeah, I just sometimes have a few questions, and we all just sit down. I'm lucky to be part of a few networks of other artists that are, you know, and kind of just chat. So most of it's on WhatsApp now, but even on that, it's really interesting to get stuff that comes up, you know, and we try and meet up when we can also. But often we talk about stuff not even related to our work, but it always, if you're making work, if you're creative, no matter what that is, everything around you affects that creativity, you know, affects, because you're putting stuff out into the world. That's what you're doing. So you have to take stuff to put it out. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you got any projects that you're working on or are in the pipeline at the moment that you could tell us about?
Yeah, I'm working on a new show, a new sort of sit down and watch theatre show. So I make work in lots of different places, like, you know, for gallery spaces. I do a lot of nightclub performances, cabaret, and also in theatre spaces. I like mixing up like where I perform, because often it's very different types of audience, and I'm really interested in the audience. And I think that's where my artist work and my sort of programming events work really mix together, because it's all of it is about creating a shared space where something happens, you know, where we can think about something, or where we can be part of a community, or, you know. So I think I'm working on this new show for theatre. It's the worst time ever to be working on a theatre show, because like I'm not going to get it be able to perform it for ages because of the COVID. But
Yeah.
a lot of artists are adapting and thinking about what we can do, and I think that's brilliant. But I'm like, I'm just going to make what I want to make. So I started it last year, and it's around hedonism, which feels actually even more important now that we've not been able to go to clubs, now that we've not been able to party, now that we've not been able to get out there so much. It feels quite an interesting subject to be revisiting it, and I'm really curious to see and feel what it's going to be like when we can gather again in that way, you know, and we can go to gigs, we can do that, and you know, it'll be interesting to see kind of what that feels like after such a massive break. And then with Home Live Art, we've got lots of exciting stuff. I'm really, you know, we're going to be working on this new project with young people, sort of supporting or helping them to devise and create their own online social media channel. And that's something I'm really excited about, particularly around the creating content, because what I love to do is like to support people to get their creative ideas up and running. Like it's the most joyous part of my work is for someone to have an idea, and then you help, you work support, and suddenly it's there and it's amazing and people are loving it, and it's just like it's a brilliant part of the job. So I'm so excited to be doing that with young people in the community that I live in. So yeah, lots of stuff coming up.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for this talk. It's been really interesting. I hope you found it beneficial as well. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.